Hello, I'm Pastor Paul. Welcome to the Lord of Life Lutheran Church Sermon Podcast. We're glad you're here. We know that you can't always be in worship with us, so we're glad to provide the sermons from our weekly services. We hope that you will find hope and inspiration as we have in Jesus Christ. And now, here's this week's message. The Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 13th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
As he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." The Gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep calm and carry on. Which, by the way, is the theme for this week's message. Keep calm, carry on. There was a poster that was initially produced by the British Ministry of Information at the beginning of the Second World War. It was intended to be distributed in order to strengthen morale among the people in the event of a wartime disaster. Over 2.5 million copies were printed, although the poster was distributed only in limited numbers. The poster was the third in a series of 3. The previous 2 posters were from the series were "Freedom is in peril, defend it with all your might," and "Your courage, your cheerfulness, your resolution will bring us victory." These were issued across the country for motivational purposes, as the Ministry of Information assumed that the events of the first weeks of the war would demoralize the population. Planning for the posters began in April of 1939. By June, designs were prepared, and by August of 1939, they were on their way to the printers to be placed up within 24 hours of the outbreak of war. The posters were designed to have a uniform device, be a design associated with the Ministry of Information, and have a unique, recognizable lettering with a message from the king to his people. An icon of the Tudor crown was chosen to head the poster rather than a photograph of the king. The slogans were created by civil servants. These particular posters were designed as a statement of the duty of the individual citizen and were intended to offer assurance for the dark days ahead. We have some idea about the context in which the British people read these posters and heard this message. We know it from history, from television, from movies. We may have a harder time understanding the context in which Mark's gospel is written. Today's lesson was directed to an audience of Christ followers who faced pressures from within and from without. From within, as they tried to figure out how they could fit into the lifestyle they had known, the one they'd always known as a part of the temple, often in conflict within families, and because of the promised Messiah, and those who believed that Jesus was that Messiah against those who did not. Pressure from without, from a society dominated by Roman government and a desire to oppress and persecute and punish those who claim to be Jesus' followers. It's into this context that the listener in Mark's day would have heard the prophecy that Jesus shared. We understand prophecy differently these days. We have people making all kinds of predictions all around us. We have pundits who claim that they are the authority on something, and they speak about issues in the future, And then when they are often proven wrong or the things don't happen the way that they said that they would, they simply make the next prediction. In the Old Testament and in today's lesson, prophetic word provides a diagnosis of a moral or spiritual health of the people. A prophetic word of judgment, then, intends to promote repentance and reform. So for the purpose of this lesson from Mark's Gospel, Jesus is giving instructions and not simply being a fortune teller. Jesus talks to his disciples about the destruction of the temple because he knows that they place too much importance on it, that they are distracted by a building and its majesty instead of being focused on what it means to live out lives of discipleship, to love God and to love neighbor. This text would be all too real for Mark's audience years after Jesus' prediction because the temple would have already been destroyed. Jesus knows that the governments come and go, that leaders come and go, and that his own crucifixion awaits him. Things will change. Wars will come. Earthquakes will happen. The temple will fall. Jesus will be handed over to die, and the disciples' world will be turned upside down. In a way, Jesus is telling his followers, keep calm, carry on. Keep calm, I am with you until the end of the age. Carry on, you are called to something greater than yourselves, to share the gospel message with all the earth. We live in an age of instant knowledge and access to information. We watched live on television as governments in the Middle East fell amid protests by the people, spurred by social media. We've seen great storms and earthquakes in recent months, and currently we get daily coverage of massive fires in California. Elections have proven that our nation is still at odds over the right political path forward. Yet how surprised are we when we face difficult, challenging times ourselves, when painful things happen in our own lives? One of the greatest joys we can have is the ability to speak hope and a reminder of Christ's presence with our world to those facing adversity. Hospital beds become our pulpits for proclaiming the good news that Christ is with us. Many conversations in the hallways of hospitals, funeral homes, and at funeral visitations and luncheons are just for the purpose of speaking hope into each other's lives, into the lives of those who wait and watch with their loved ones. So how do you hear the words of Jesus' prophecy today? What things in your life are distracting you from your relationship with God? Are you like one of the disciples coming from the temple, marveling at the large stones and the massive buildings? Or are you like one of the disciples on the mountainside with Jesus, focused on when something might happen? In the midst of our lives filled with too much of everything, we need to hear Jesus' words for us today. We need to hear that implied, keep calm, carry on message. We are called to focus on our faith in Jesus, to love God and to love our neighbor. And we too are called to live out our faith in daily life. Daily life where chaos can take over quickly, where uncertainty may abide. We need each other. And there are those around us each day that need us too. How will you speak a word of hope to someone this week? How will you be Christ's hands and feet in the coming days, confident that Jesus' promise to be with you to the end of the age is true? Next weekend, we'll celebrate Christ the King Sunday. This weekend and every day, we have a message from our King to his people. Whatever challenges you may face today, no matter what challenges you will face in the coming days, hear the good news. Christ is with you. Keep calm. Carry on. Amen. thanks for listening to the Lord of Life Lutheran Church Sermon Podcast. If you're ever in the Dubuque-Land area, please join us for worship. Visit our website at www.lordoflife.online to learn more about service times and about our vision for serving God and our community. God bless you.